Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to MovieFilm. It's October. This is episode 301. I'm Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy? Wow, this is the second episode, I think, where you've shortened it to Brian instead of Brian Hall.
Yeah, I've decided we're going to do that. It's like Zachy Hassan and Brian. It's like Captain America and Bucky.
I like it. I like it.
You'll just be one name, like Madonna.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Or who's the guy that? Well, we gave McG a lot of crap recently about having one name, but the guy that directed Catwoman, was that like Pitoff or something?
Pitoff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Brian.
And what a long and illustrious Hollywood career Pitoff has had.
You know, who knows? You know what? Maybe we're living in his art right now. With a name like that, I wouldn't put it past him.
Oh, man, it is the spooky season, and this conversation is scary.
Why is that, Zachy?
Because it's so unformed and just it doesn't follow the usual practiced precision and polish that we try to punctuate our pronunciation with.
You know what? I love that. Isn't that exciting, though?
Podcasting without a net. It's what we do.
I agree. I love it.
How's your October so far?
October, well, a little too early to call, I'd say, but the end of September was kind of nice. I was out of town to celebrate my grandmother's 100th birthday.
Amazing.
So, yeah, and it ended up being like a really nice kind of time where I went out to Minnesota to go see my family, and, my grandma, it's amazing. At 100, she's still, as soon as I saw her, she's like, do you remember, when you were like 8 years old and you wanted to insist on wearing a tie to your birthday party? And I was like, wow. Like, kind of. It's amazing that you remember that. But that time was amazing, catching up with family. And then my dad, I'd mentioned on the show that I had recently done a road trip with our friend Sean from Los Angeles all the way out to the coast in North Carolina. So I crossed, horizontal across the country, but then I went from Minnesota down to Tulsa, Oklahoma with my dad and crisscrossed the country in the opposite direction with a road trip to get him back home. And then I saw my folks for a day or two, and then I headed back. So it was actually a really lovely end of September.
Well, the reason you raced home was because we had so many movies to discuss.
We have so much to discuss. I mean, and you're good. How's your end of September, early October going so far?
Hey, it's all good. I celebrated my birthday.
Yes, which I've said it off air, but I'll say it here officially. Happy birthday, Zachy.
Thanks so much. I'm now literally in my mid 40s. My actual middle of my 40s.
Isn't that wild?
It's weird because I used to, do this thing where whenever I would have a birthday, I would double my age in my mind just to see, like, what am I doing? So when I turned 40, I'm like, what am I doing when I'm 80? So just now I'm like, what am I doing when I'm not? Oh,
it's wild. It's wild.
Maybe nothing. So it's weird to have that realization,
Yeah. Was it good? Was it fun? Like good?
Yeah, it was, I went out in the evening to watch the new documentary about Christopher Reeve, Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story.
Yeah. I'm very curious about this. While I was in Oklahoma, I saw Batman '89 in the theaters because they put that back out for the Batman.
I got to do that too,
which was amazing. And they had the trailer for this before the film, and it's just. Obviously we love Christopher Reeve, but just seeing his Superman on a big screen, it just stirred me up. And then, of course, it's the story of Christopher Reeve, and you can't help but just feel a lot of emotion. So I'm very curious what you thought of the documentary itself.
So Christopher Reeve and I shared a birthday. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they released the movie in theaters on his birthday.
Okay.
And so for my own birthday present, I got to go see it. And well, actually, even before I talk about that, this is Batman '89. I should say the last time I saw that in the theater was with you 5 years ago.
I know, which was super, super special. That was for me because I was a little young. My parents didn't let me see it in the theater because they were worried it'd be too scary for me. So that was the first time I saw that movie on a big screen, and it exceeded my expectations. It just was amazing to see it in a whole new way, larger than life.
Yeah, I got to take most of my kids with me to see it, and just to have that experience, you know.
Yep.
So it's been fun because in the last year, I've seen The Dark Knight. I'd seen The Dark Knight before in the theater, but like I got to take my kids to that, and then seeing Batman '89. I just love that. We've talked about this before. I love that there's so many opportunities to watch these classics on the big screen.
I know. I'm really, really loving it. And I know there's Fathom events, and I have a Regal theater closest to me. And for a while, they were showing older films on Wednesdays, just Christopher Nolan films, the Goonies, whatever. And the theaters were always full. So it seems like there is a demand for that kind of stuff. I hope they keep it up.
Back to the Future 2 is coming back to theaters in a couple of weeks.
I saw that. Yeah.
So that I'm considering that.
Yeah.
But as far as the Superman Christopher Reeve documentary, highly recommend it. I mean, it's obviously the emotional, just the connection that people from our generation have with seeing Christopher Reeve as that character is one thing, and that's plentiful in the documentary. But what it really does well is it tells these two parallel stories. So it's the story of how he grew up and how he got the part and sort of the stardom that came with that. And then it's intercut with his accident and his recovery or his attempted recovery and everything that happened there,
Oh, interesting. So not linear.
It's right. Okay. Exactly. And so, one track feeds the other. And, you have a sense of not just what he went through, but what his family, what his children went through. And, there's so much home video footage and all the little, but both pre and post accident, the what it was like in the Reeve family. And I think that makes it very intimate. And it's also, you have his children, his youngest son, Will, who was like 3 when he had his accident, talks in great detail about what it was like when he found out his father had passed and he found out his mother had passed. But the older sons talk about what it was like, before his accident, in terms of what was at times a complicated relationship, and how in a weird way they grew closer to him after the accident. And just, being willing to open up, right? It's illuminating. It is sad. I'm not gonna lie. I rolled a tear at least a couple times, but it is an uplifting story in that you realize how much good has been done in his name, right? So he's been gone for 20 years now. It's hard to believe, but the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, which is dedicated to bringing funding and stuff to spinal injuries. How much good has been done in those 20 years? People have regained mobility because of the work of this foundation.
That's incredible.
So he didn't live to see it happen, and yet his legacy is twofold, because he is and always will be Superman. But there's this also,
That's amazing. Two things that you said that really, I already wanted to see it, but two things I enjoyed hearing is, I kind of like when documentaries aren't afraid to get into the warts and all of stuff or a person. And it's not like I want anything salacious, but it's like I really do want to get to know the person. And when it's, some documentaries can be just a little surfacey and like, just almost like reading a Wikipedia page and then almost polishing them up in a certain sort of way so they can just be the statue we look at. And it's like, well, I don't know if it's even worth it. Like, I'd rather get to truly know who the person was so we can know what informed certain things that happened in their lives, or the triumphs feel more triumphant when we know that maybe there was some things that weren't so polished that happened before that, and it's
right.
I'm glad that that's sort of the case with this, because I don't know a lot about Christopher Reeve. I really would like to get to know the man better. And it's also, I don't know a lot about, honestly, the legacy of all the research that was done thanks to him. And so I know the broad strokes of his story, but I look forward to learning about him, everything that happened, and then what he set in motion and what's been done, thanks to him. This all sounds like stuff I don't know, and I look forward to learning about.
Yeah, the ultimate measure of his, the what he has left behind is that there are people who could not walk, who now are able to some degree.
Amazing.
Amazing,
Yeah.
And I've said this before, like what kills me is that he didn't get to have that second act career resurgence from all the people who grew up loving him.
Right.
Because and the doc doesn't get into this as much as it could have, which I kind of wish it would have. Like in the early 90s, his career had stalled out.
Right.
Like doing like TV movies where he was playing pedophiles and stuff, and it's work is work, but it was because he wasn't a draw in the same way anymore, right?
Sure.
And he didn't get to sort of age into a character actor. He didn't get to age into being in a place where, again, it's like Adam West on Family Guy, or that, and he knew how loved he was, I'm sure, but it's like we got, let me put it this way, we got to see Michael Keaton come back as Batman last year.
That's literally what I was thinking of.
Right?
Yep.
And what a great thing it would have been for Christopher Reeve to be sort of the to get to live to see himself as the the guy who started all this, really,
Absolutely. And we're in a moment where that isn't corny.
Exactly.
Or a cheap trick, kind of a thing. And like, this is something that, in popular culture, everyone, it's a moment, I mean, well, the movie didn't end up being a moment, but the fact that Michael Keaton was back as Batman was a moment. And it would have been really awesome to see Christopher Reeve get to enjoy that, a moment like that.
So the documentary itself is getting a wide release starting October 11th. So,
okay.
The limited release did well enough to warrant that. So check it out. Anybody listening, definitely give it a look.
Yeah, I definitely will. Well, I checked out a movie that was kind of interesting. Just its release is interesting. Wolves, the Brad Pitt, George Clooney movie, which was made by Apple, but it was supposed to have a typical theatrical release, but then all of a sudden in the weeks leading up to it, they said, actually, it's just going to go straight to Apple TV Plus. But then it was in theaters for like a week or two or something. So it was a little confused, I guess, its release. However, when I was traveling, I was about to get on the plane and I got an email that said it was now on Apple TV Plus. And I was like, oh, cool. All right. Like, it had that weird sort of luster of like, well, this was going to be a theatrical movie and it's got these two huge stars in it. What's this all about? And basically the plot is these two fixers. So imagine, the wolf from Pulp Fiction, Harvey Keitel's character. George Clooney plays that type of character. He shows up to clean up a mess, but then ding dong, like another fixer enters, which is Brad Pitt. Like, well, I'm here to clean up the mess. And they're like, well, I work alone. And you're like, well, I work alone. And then hilarity ensues. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, I like these guys. I can't say the trailer was doing like a ton for me, but it was just the promise of, it's that chemistry that we love from Ocean's 11. And that's a great premise. These two fixers who normally work alone, now they have to work together. And I would say it all added up to a perfectly okay, if not immediately forgettable movie.
Okay.
So, it felt like a slightly better than average streaming movie. It really, at the end of the day, I would say the first act was really great. And the whole thing where they're interacting in the room and it's like, well, I have this kind of method that I do. Well, then I'm going to sit over here if you don't want me to help, and that kind of thing is sort of funny as they're trying to figure out what to do with the body. And then the middle is just kind of whatever. Like it inserts this plot, which never really pops, and these kind of misadventures they go on that I honestly am struggling to remember a whole lot about in this moment. But then the third act gets good. You know what I mean? So I actually liked where it headed in the third act and what it puts these guys up against and decisions they have to make. And the way that they there's like a moment that's really funny where they're in the car and they've been through all this stuff. And one guy kind of is like, ugh. And so then George Clooney silently opens up his glove compartment, pulls out a bottle of Advil and hands it to Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt just silently kind of, thanks. Like takes the Advil, then Clooney takes an Advil. Hilarious. Like it's just, those kind of things are the things that make it rise above some of this typical kind of stuff. But, and again, I like where the dilemma it puts them in the third act and what they, have to choose. And they may even have different ideas about what they have to choose. Good stuff. But again, the middle is just kind of, Okay. It's elevated slightly by their chemistry, obviously. But yeah, I just wish it had been a little bit stronger as a whole. So I would just say, if you enjoy seeing Brad Pitt and George Clooney together, I don't think you'll regret watching it, but I can't say that you necessarily need to go out of your way for it either. So, it's a streaming option and it's maybe a better than average one, but it's also not one you're probably going to think about much afterwards.
Even despite what you're saying, where you're kind of like, I'm still pissed off that this thing did not get a full-on theatrical release.
Yeah.
Because I miss the days of just theater movies that you go to see, and that's fine because there's room for those type of movies in the theaters.
I totally agree with you. I mean, frankly, I was talking with someone about seeing, I saw two movies really close together for this episode, and they were like, what was the last thing you saw? And I was like, aside from Beetlejuice, I don't know. Like it's been, it's like, yeah, it used to be there was something every week. Some of it was great. Some of it was not great. And some of it was just fine. And that was okay. And I kind of miss that too, to be honest. And I would why not? Well, I guess there's costs, of course, but why not just put this out there for the people who would have shown up for it? And it makes, obviously this, going back to our regular conversation, this thing should not cost over 200 million or what it probably did. It is not on screen. It is not. That's absurd. That cost for this movie. But if you price it correctly, and then the people who are interested show up, and why not put this? I would have liked to have watched this on a screen. And then, like a month or two later, put it on Apple for the people who don't want to pay that price, or, I don't know. I just feel like we're still finding our way. I think. Although I will say, I keep saying that, and we say that a lot on this show about like, oh, why not the theater? Why aren't people should go see this? Or why didn't people show up for that? Or people would if you put it out in theaters. But I have to acknowledge, I am so used to my Regal Unlimited club or whatever that I pay for. I pay like $23 a month. I see whatever I want. I don't think about it. But I did go see, we're going to talk about this in a future episode, but I saw the Saturday Night movie about the first episode of Saturday Night Live. And it was showing early at a different theater, a different chain of theaters. And my friend was like, do you want to go? I was like, yeah, I'll get us tickets. 2 people, 2 tickets, $41.
Okay, well that's
insanity.
Cockamamie, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay. Like it snapped me out of the little bubble I was living in with my great little membership. And I was like, okay, that's why people don't show up for a movie like Wolves.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's what we were just talking about Back to the Future too. I was looking in to get tickets for that for me and the kids, and it was like 140.
Good Lord. Yeah.
I'm like, nope, I own it on streaming and Blu-ray and everything else.
I know. Well, and even Bob Iger said that. He's pointed out, the most popular day of the week for theatrical movies is Tuesday because those are the nights that theaters discount.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, there's what more stats do you need? I don't know. I'm sure they have some sort of spreadsheet that makes sense to them, but it just feels like if you lower a little bit of this, maybe the profits rise. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, with regards to Apple in particular, so according to Wikipedia, they're listing the budget for Wolves at around $85 million.
Oh, I thought it was much, much higher. Okay, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, so let's say it's 85-ish, so somewhere between 85 and 90. Okay, well, they could have made that back in theaters, I think, right?
I would think. And
right?
I was going to say not to mention pre-sales and things like that and foreign and whatnot, but I don't know how that works when it's an
Right.
Apple movie. I mean, do they?
For an Apple movie.
Yeah.
But my sense is that last fall they went all in on a big splashy theatrical release for two movies that were never going to be big hits.
Napoleon.
Killers of the Flower Moon and Napoleon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, those are the ones that you should have done a token theatrical release and then you drop it on streaming.
Right.
So I don't understand anything, Brian.
I don't either. And
nothing makes sense.
But you know what? I gave this one kind of a feeling to positive, I suppose. But I did watch another streaming movie on Netflix that I really enjoyed that I wanted to shout out called Rebel Ridge. Have you heard of this
I've
movie?
been hearing great things about this.
Me too. Honestly, it wasn't on my radar at all, but I had been hearing how great it was, seeing little articles about how great it was. And so again, I'm getting on an airplane with my iPad. What do I have to lose? So I downloaded it and I really enjoyed this movie. It's, it's, to simplify it, it's kind of First Blood. Basically,
that's what I heard. Yeah, that's what me. That immediately got my spidey sense tingling.
Yeah, and but that reduces it a little bit because what plays out is very different in that it is about a person who's former military trying to make their way through a small town and gets harassed by local police and their chief and whoever. The circumstances are a little different. It's a Marine, and he is basically, actually, I'm not even going to get into it because I love not knowing anything, but he's got a goal and he has to be there by a certain amount of time to help a relative. Mm-hmm. And so as he's getting harassed and as he's getting, pushback and there's a real ticking clock to this. He really has to be somewhere on time. But what's different here than First Blood is, Rambo, obviously he was trying to get away from everything, but it leads to all this escalation. But any escalation in this story will ruin everything. So it's all about how can this person in this increasingly frustrating situation continue to de-escalate in a really intelligent way. And that was really fascinating to watch because you feel yourself getting your blood starting to boil, but that will not solve anything. So it's like, how does this person continue to de-escalate? Even when, of course, things come to a head and there is action in this film. But even then, how does this person continue to keep everything under control because they have to get to their goal on time?
Right. Okay.
This is great. This is a great movie. I definitely recommend it. It's on Netflix, super easy to access. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. So I recommend Rebel Ridge.
Jeremy Saulnier, the director, who we actually had an interview with him on our show about 8 years ago.
Was that with Green Room?
Green Room, that's right. Anton Yelchin, the late Anton Yelchin, and him. I spoke with them, and I'm pretty sure we put the interview on the show.
Yeah. That's a movie I've heard a lot of great things about, and I haven't seen. But after this, it made me want to dip into his filmography.
I'm curious what you think.
Yeah.
Well, here's one I know we've both seen.
Yes.
And I feel like we're among the few who have seen it.
Yes.
Yeesh. Transformers 1, the new animated prequel from Paramount that was, I think, hoping to unearth a new vein of box office gold from the Transformers franchise.
And it...
Not so much.
it didn't. But I remember we talked about the trailer for this one.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but... Yeah. I really have to say Paramount's marketing department has been shitting the bed so consistently lately that because I remember the trailers for Dungeons and Dragons, remember?
Yeah.
Those were lousy. The trailer for this, I was like, F this movie right in the ear.
I remember. Yeah. And I will say, I did not feel the same way, but I also wasn't personally excited for it. My feeling was they're trying to kickstart a new generation of Transformers fans. Like the name Transformers is besmirched, right? Thanks to the Michael Bay films. And they've tried to kind of pivot a little bit with Bumblebee, which I really enjoyed. I watched it with my family. My whole family enjoyed that movie, but I think it still resembled too much the movies that everyone is kind of sick of.
Yeah.
And so to me, this was like a real, okay, we're starting from scratch and we're also going young. Almost like, what happened with us. This was a cartoon we liked when we were young. So that's why we keep showing up for these terrible sequels, because it's, it's a part of our childhood. So they're like, all right, let's get some new kids in the childhood and like start over.
And that was my initial vibe was like, do we need like a Flintstone Kids version of Transformers, Like, oh, Optimus Prime and Megatron are friends, just like Fred and Mr. Slate, or whatever, like
that
when they're
is
kids.
Hilarious. Fred and Mr. Slate begin as friends. But I was a little more optimistic about it. I thought it was kind of a smart move, although I agreed with you. I think that it looked like terrible. Like it like visually it looked like Paw Patrol, the Paw Patrol movies or something.
It's just another one of these things.
Yeah. So what'd you think of the movie itself then, now that you've seen it?
So I had to say for myself, I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought the animation was just luxurious. It was rich. It was well done. The voice acting was terrific. Chris Hemsworth Chris Hemsworth really surprised me. He brought a lot of range to like pre-Optimus Prime Orion Pax, and then he kind of does like he Peter Cullens it up a little bit at the end, and when he becomes spoiler, he becomes Optimus Prime. And the thing that I thought I would have the biggest problem with, which is the idea that Optimus Prime and Megatron were friends before, man, I loved it. I thought like it was Brian Tyree Henry as Megatron. He finds this great range to play, and just it all worked for me, man. I was like, I mean, I'm not going to put it at like, I'm not going to say it's as good as the Spider-Verse movies, but I would say it's in that same tier.
Wow.
Like maybe in the lower end. If we say it's a wide tier and like Spider-Verse is at the top of that tier, maybe Transformers 1 is like at the lower end of that tier, but it's still in the tier. You know what I mean?
This is going to sound like I'm saying this as a pejorative, and I'm not, but it's definitely a kid's movie.
Yeah.
The way that they speak to one another is very, they explain things very overtly, and it's, it's like, we've been best friends for how long now? And we've been working this job. Like, and so that's the only thing I want to say in regards to Spider-Verse. I think Spider-Verse feels a little different in that respect, where like kids can enjoy it.
It's at the top of the tier. Come on.
No. Well, I'm just saying this, I enjoyed it a lot too, but I might not be as passionate about it, but for two reasons. One, I think, I'm not super like endeared to the Transformers. I like them just fine, but you know what I mean? So like a lot of the things didn't tickle me in the way that I'm sure they probably did for lifelong fans. And I also was like, oh, this is like straight up like a kid's movie, a very well done kid's movie, which doesn't happen very often.
That's my point. Let me, this is important. I went a week ago Tuesday. I took all my kids and my daughter, she's 7. Mm-hmm. She doesn't know Transformers at all. And man, she's telling everybody she knows about this movie.
See well, I was going to say they did it, but they didn't, unfortunately, because
right. I mean, I think for the people who ended up in the theater, they leave satisfied. The problem is getting them in there,
Exactly. What they set out to do, I think they nailed.
She's like, oh, did you know Optimus Prime and Megatron are friends? She's like, this is the whole backstory.
Aw, that's so cute.
Right? But here's my point. So that was a week ago Tuesday. This past Tuesday, I was out. They go to my wife. They're like, we want to go see Transformers 1 again.
Aw.
So they went again 1 week later. They've never, in all their lives, they've never done that with a movie that quickly.
Wow.
That tells you something.
Man, that makes me feel it's sad. I would suspect that people didn't show up because it felt young or something, or the animation didn't feel appealing, or they're like, who's this for? Or whatever. Maybe they're just tired of Transformers. But it's too bad, because yes, I think if people did show up to this, young and old, but it's just a satisfying meat and potatoes story with these characters, origin story with these characters. And
well, you realize that there is archetypal significance to the best friends turn mortal enemy trope.
100%.
Right? I mean, obviously there's Obi-Wan and Anakin, right? That's the obvious one. But like Professor X and Magneto, like people, Scar and Mufasa, we're going to see that in this Mufasa,
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's something people like about that. Like, it's funny because watching this movie, you're like, it's like watching Hot Tub Time Machine and the Crispin Glover character. You're like, when does his arm come off? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Right.
It's sort of like, oh, what's gonna happen to Megatron? You know? But like, to me, when they got to the place, I was like, no, okay, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, it's never not heart-wrenching. If you can make me feel something for their friendship and then knowing it's ultimately doomed, and when that stuff plays out, you're just like, no, you don't want it to happen, but you're feeling so much. And then of course, that's
Yeah, exactly. I think that what I liked about this movie is that it works as a prequel basically to any version of Transformers.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think is cool. So like, the old G1 animated show, which of course I grew up with. I mean, that shows the origin of Optimus Prime is a little bit different, but you can kind of squint past that and it still kind of works,
Mhm.
And then obviously the Michael Bay movies. Like, it's funny because this movie keeps talking about how Bumblebee won't shut up. He's always talking. And you're like, ha ha ha, because he has a horrible accident and he loses his vocal cords. It's hilarious.
Right. Which, by the way, I loved Keegan-Michael Key in that.
Oh, he was hilarious.
He made me laugh like way more than I expected.
A lot, yeah. So all that stuff. It was just a pleasant experience watching the movie.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think, again, I think people who are Transformers fans are going to love it. I think your kids will love it. I would just say that, yeah, if some people are going in expecting something like as dense and rich as something as Spider-Verse, this is just a little more simple, but it's also well done.
I think that is fair.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say, which I thought was a neat touch. First of all, there's all these little nods that are like, oh, hey, I get that, but it's not. If you know it, you know it, right?
Sure.
And there's one thing that, what was it? Oh yeah. Where Orion Pax, aka Optimus Prime, he's like a miner, and he's telling the Scarlett Johansson character like, oh, I forget what he says, like, oh, if I can touch the planet or something like that. And she says, you don't have the touch or the power.
Oh, I didn't. That went right past me. I didn't notice that.
I was like, I was like, Peter Griffin. She said it.
That's right. Of course, I mean, referring to the song from the original.
The song from the 1980s movie. And then what in the old cartoon, Megatron calls Optimus Prime, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get you, Prime, And what I love is at the end of this movie, we establish why Megatron calls him that. And it's this contempt.
Right.
Because, without spoiling anything, like, I love that thanks to this movie, it adds a context to that old show that wasn't there before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then after we watched this Transformers 1 movie, I came home and I watched the Transformers 1986 animated movie with my daughter, as just all the characters get killed off one after the
other. What did she think? I mean, even just for someone who's younger and accustomed to the style of animation in Transformers 1.
Yeah.
What was it like then for her to watch the older one? I mean, did she?
So, well, she has either an advantage or disadvantage in that she's my daughter, so she has been exposed to this stuff.
Right.
So the notion of traditional old-timey cell animation is not, anathema to her existence. But it was interesting. See, it was when my older two kids, I mean, now they're almost 18, almost 16, but when they were little, I watched all of the G1 animated show with them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first two seasons of the old show, with all Optimus Prime and all the original characters, and I did this because I wanted them to watch the show and have that experience. But the real reason I did it, Brian, was because I had I was setting them up to watch that animated movie and watch their hearts fall, through the floor.
Right.
Because in the first 10 minutes, every character you came to love dies horribly. Like, they don't die off screen. They're like, no, you watch Optimus Prime die on the table as the other characters are crying. I did this to them on purpose.
And did they turn to you and be like, why, Dad?
It was great.
That's funny. I like that was your grand plan.
That was I mapped that shit out,
It's funny.
But anyway, Transformers 1, I would say catch it in the theater, but probably by the time you're listening to this, it's already gone. So it will be discovered on streaming. I have every expectation.
You know what? Yeah. That makes me sad, obviously, because I did enjoy watching it on a big screen. But, I guess you can't dismiss that. I mean, something coming to streaming isn't necessarily, it's lost forever now. I mean, that could be sort of like Horizon Chapter 1. Maybe that's where everyone discovers it, and then it gets a sequel. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's where it was meant to be all along, maybe.
You know what's crazy, though? We were talking about this earlier this week. Beetlejuice, which is one of the, big movies of the year, still killing it. It's been out for about a month, I would say. It's still in the number 2 position in the box office, and Halloween is coming up. I don't think it has any signs of stopping. And they're putting it on streaming next week.
Yeah, I don't get that.
I'm like,
although taking a positive view, I have a feeling at this point it's like a wheel that's already in motion.
What do you mean?
And like the story of its box office success is such that people are still going to want to see it in the theater, knowing how well it's doing in the theater.
I guess this is kind of a unique one.
Right. Like I think there will be a separate audience from streaming, but if I were to guess, that streaming audience will not cannibalize the theatrical audience at this point.
I can see that. And maybe this is that weird sort of masterstroke where you shouldn't have like a boilerplate plan for this kind of thing, but you just look at each movie specifically and it's like, look, it crushed. Like we did it. And like you said, people will probably still show up for this, I imagine, leading up to Halloween. At the same time, there are some people that just can't or won't go to the theater for this. Let's get them too, especially in the Halloween spirit.
Yeah, this is kind of a unicorn of a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But actually, while we're talking about animated movies about robots, The Wild Robot is in theaters right now.
I'm hearing great things. I'm so curious.
This is a good one. You got to watch this. You'll enjoy it. Oh, it's adorable. It's really, really well done.
Man, yeah. So we're going to talk about Megalopolis and Joker this episode, but I kind of wish I had seen My Old Ass, the Aubrey Plaza movie, which I'm hearing great things about, and The Wild Robot, which I'm hearing great things about. Maybe those were the two. But yeah, tell me about it.
Well, this is from DreamWorks, and it's honestly, it's probably one of the best movies they've done, if not the best.
Is this Shrek slander I'm hearing right now?
Yeah, it may be,
on behalf of our millennial audience.
It's like Pixar level in my opinion.
Wow. Okay.
In terms, it's based on a children's book, and this is another one, man. My daughter has been reading the storybook. Okay. I mean, it's like a children's novel,
Okay.
And so I had to watch it because I was doing a feature for the paper. And so I just told her, "Hey, sweetheart, I'm watching The Wild Robot right now." She's like, "What? I have to come watch it too." So like we're watching it on my computer, and she's like pointing. She's like, "Oh, that character, his name is so and so," and I'm like, "Shh, let me experience this," But it's I don't want to spoil it. It's about this robot that ends up in a forest.
Okay.
And hilarity ensues. No, well, there is some hilarity, but it's there's a lot of heart too.
Right. Like the robot sort of like gets to know some creatures in the forest, right?
Yeah,
it's like a relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, and Lupita Nyong'o is the voice of the robot, and Pedro Pascal is in there, and you got some voice actors, and I talked to Chris Sanders, the director, who also did. He did The Croods and How to Train Your Dragon, and Lilo and Stitch, etc. But he also did A Call of the Wild a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
So that was his first live action movie, and he talked about how making live action ended up being such a big help for when he went back to animation, just in terms of forming relationships with the actors and really working on that part of the process.
Interesting. Okay.
But what he said that was really interesting to me, he's like, we don't do stories about mothers. We do stories about fathers and orphans.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that is so true.
That is true.
And he's like, that's what appealed to me. This is a story about motherhood. So I think it's just very sweet, very special. I suspect it's going to do It's gonna. I'm sure it's doing fine theatrically, but I suspect it'll have a long shelf life.
Yeah, I know it overperformed at the box office this past weekend, and maybe I had heard it was good, so I was interested, but I didn't know that this was, already had like a fan base, with like your daughter and other kids. So I'm glad. It's I like to see something like this succeed.
Yeah, it's very, very, very Iron Giant vibes off this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So definitely give that a look when you get a chance.
Very cool.
Okay, so let's take a short break, and when we come back, Brian has an announcement. And we're back, and Brian, you look like you have something to say.
Do you? Everyone's going to want to hear what I have to say after that. Well, Zachy and I want to announce that the MovieFilm podcast is officially launching a Patreon. This is something we had talked about doing for a while, but kept putting off. But it felt like the time was right now for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we absolutely love doing this show and engaging with so many listeners. This started as a hobby that we literally recorded on our phones and eventually grew into a production. And it's a production we love, but one that also takes a bit of time. And as Zachy and I are facing increasingly demanding schedules outside of the show, we're beginning to feel like we needed to find a way to make this a little more sustainable for us. Like I said, there's the time, but there's also production costs that come with the show. So those sorts of things we began to feel like we needed to consider. The second thing was some recent changes we noticed in posting our show. As everybody knows, we have ad breaks throughout our episodes and occasionally during our commentaries. And of course, that's fine and totally normal. And we are very grateful for those advertisers. But the way that used to go was we had a certain amount of ads that we needed to have per episode. And it was great. We felt like it was a pretty healthy number. We were unable to meet those numbers with the commentaries because we wanted to preserve the integrity of the commentary track and have it uninterrupted. And we would get warnings every time we posted a commentary track. But everything seemed to be okay. But recently, it's changed where now we need to have not just a certain amount of ads, but a certain number of ad breaks that is pretty high. And again, we're very thankful that we have the opportunity to do that. It really has helped us put on this show, but we also feel like it will change the flow of the show. And it's also something where with the commentary tracks, we're not going to be able to keep those ad-free any longer. It's just not going to be possible. And we want to do that. So we decided that now was the time to create a Patreon. At the moment, we have one tier for $5 a month, which will include all our past commentaries and every future episode and every future commentary we produce absolutely ad-free. Now, this doesn't mean that the ad version of the show is going away. That will always be available. But for those who are able and want to enjoy a smoother version of the show, as well as help support us and the efforts we put into putting all this together, we'd be very grateful if you would sign up and join us. So for $5 a month, you get every commentary we've ever done and every new episode and commentary, all ad-free. And also, you'd really be helping us out. So to sign up, just click on patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast. That's patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast. The most important thing is we want everyone to continue enjoying the show in a way that feels comfortable for them. And for those who are able to join us on Patreon, you will have our deepest gratitude.
There you go. And remember, Johnny Gobbs didn't give us $5, and he got ripped and took a walk off a roof. No big loss.
It's not what I heard at all, Zachy. I heard he didn't subscribe to the MovieFilm podcast Patreon.
But thank you, Brian, for that very helpful message to our listeners. The way I look at it, it's very simple. We love doing this. We think if just kick a few coins into the bucket if you like what we're doing.
Yeah, we'd very much appreciate it.
So with that, let's take a short break. We got some listener letters. And we're back, and here are some listener letters we got going on here, Brian.
All right, let's hear it.
Again, and I want to say, by the way, the bag overfloweth, so we're kind of parceling some of this stuff out just because this is kind of a double stuffed episode. But here's a note we got from Spencer Toyson, who says, "Hey there, fellas. Recently, some big life changes started for me. I'm going to be a dad."
Hey, congrats.
Congrats. Even though I'm 10 years removed from my teens, I still feel like that same dude jamming in his garage all day, fueled by, of course, Baja Blast. Amen. Anyway, it got me thinking about the movies I shared with my mom and dad. Much like you two, I grew up on a steady diet of Spielberg, Star Wars, and Superman. Reductive for sure, but I feel that's a good sum of why I love this show. However, what sticks is the outliers, the strange, informative films that put me in the space we all share, thanks to the adult roommates I had. My dad loves, to this day, Smokey and the Bandit, Convoy, and Blazing Saddles. He introduced me to Sandler and that sphere of comedies. We spent many days when we were sick just laughing away the crud. He wasn't just a laugher either. The first time I saw Saving Private Ryan, insert title jokes here, my pops sure did, was with dear old dad. Together, albeit maybe a tad early, my parents showed me Seven at age 6, ironically.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't traumatized, but it certainly left a mark for my taste in mysteries. Terminator and T2 were staples for me before kindergarten. Brought those to show and tell, and that's the first time I was in trouble for the teacher. Long story aside, I can't wait to have these formative moments with my kid. These are memories and movies I can't separate. Actually, I'm kind of tearing up writing this. So I'll say this. Dads have boats. I'll get one day. And for you guys, name it Down Keister Alexa. Because of the Keister thing, remember?
Yep.
That's our claim to fame. 80s Joel, over and out, good buddies. We got ourselves a convoy. Take care. Spencer, can't leave a good joke alone, Tyson.
Thank you for that, Spencer. It's funny. I've seen Blazing Saddles, but I've never seen Smokey and the Bandit or Convoy.
I've not seen Convoy. I have seen Smokey and the Bandit.
They're referenced a lot. I think especially growing up, those are things that people saw and then wrote jokes about in the material I was watching, but I have not seen the actual thing.
Yeah.
But
regardless, that what Spencer talks about, that sense of like, looking forward to sharing these formative movie going experiences with your kids. I mean, that's definitely something I've been lucky enough to experience. I just mentioned earlier about, waiting to traumatize them with the death of Optimus Prime.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, even like I remember when my oldest, when he was 10, I was like, okay, you're old enough. And we went to see T2 when it was released in theaters.
That's so cool. That's so perfect.
Yeah. So that I can definitely relate to that,
Yeah, totally.
It's a shared language. I'm very grateful to have that,
Yeah.
Here's a note we got from Alex Naom, who says, "Good morning, gents." Speaking of, by the way, taking your kids to the movies, he says, "It was very cool seeing a photo of Zachy at a screening of 89 Batman in honor of this year's Batman Day." Which, by the way, how did that get decided? It's September. It's the third September, the third Saturday in September.
Okay.
Is Batman Day.
I don't know. You don't know if that's in reference to something or
I don't.
Like the day the comic debuted, or
I just assumed it started as a pagan holiday and it was reformist Batman adherents.
That's funny.
Decided on it. I don't know,
Yeah.
These Hallmark holidays when really we should be celebrating our Lord and Savior Batman. What's going on? Hey, what do I care? They every year they re-release one of these movies at least.
I was just gonna say, does this mean that Batman's gonna be playing every year in the theater in September? Like,
if not 89, other ones.
I know Forever was also playing where I was.
See, there you go. I wouldn't
Yeah.
actually. I'd be honest. I wouldn't mind watching that one. You would want to like put your earplugs in, probably.
The first thing that came to my mind was, it's boiling acid.
I was just thinking that.
I don't know why. I have such a vivid. I remember when I was 5 years old and I saw E.T. being sick, and I never forgot it. And for some reason, in 1995, I remember the security guard yelling, "It's boiling acid." I don't know. I don't know.
But regardless, Alex says, what did the kid think of the film? Well, he had. I went with my oldest, who's he's seen it a few times, and then my 10-year-old, and they've seen him, and the nice thing is they know, like, I'm a Keaton guy,
Yeah.
So like I feel like they kind of indulge Dad.
Yeah. I like Ike. You know what I mean? It's like the button for you. It's like, I like
what
Mike.
it is.
Yeah.
I like Mike, basically. Well, I mean, they like Michael Keaton too, but I mean, I kind of dig that they have grown up in the multiverse age, and so for them, it isn't really like they don't have they don't have the fights about, oh no, that's not Batman,
Right.
Unless like, sure I am. Here's a picture of me with Robin,
That's right.
They're just like, well, that's the Batman that Dad grew up with,
Yeah.
Alex goes on, I too indulged in some Bat media. I went to my local cinema to see the Dark Knight trilogy.
Ooh.
And I may be in the minority here. Don't hate me for having this crazy opinion, but these films are pretty damn good.
Alex.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that kind of crazy talk here. It's amazing how with films you've watched countless times, you can discover new qualities about them when they're on the big screen. Well, that I agree with, because
Totally.
that's why I like going to see this stuff again on the big screen. Two things really stuck out to me this time around. Firstly, there is so much that Christian Bale conveys with his eyes and facial expressions. It's an incredible portrayal. During the scene it begins after his dip in the hotel pool and he sees Rachel. Oh man, the longing in his eyes, the desperate need for a simple, happy life with Rachel, but his duty to this multi-personality life he has to lead that's pulling him away. Just chef's kiss. To quote Brian Hall, I feel like that's like a
I like that expression.
The other standout quality was with Rises, which I hadn't seen all the way through in many years. I found a new level of appreciation for Tom Hardy's performance because of parallels I noticed with Donald Trump, of all people. The BS man of the people persona Bane puts forward, and especially his speech in front of Blackgate Prison where he holds up Dent's photo and his words are just caked in cynicism, were immensely gripping. But somebody, you saw this, right? Somebody did a video where they intercut a video of Trump giving a speech and that same Bane speech.
No.
Yeah, it's like, because it's literally, we take it to you, the people. And it's Trump literally saying that. It's hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not a performance that is as obviously brilliant the first time you watch it as Heath Ledger's Joker, but I'm glad that, for me at least, it's held up really well. Did Brian watch any Bat media last weekend? Well, you did. You watched 89. Right? And have either of you started The Penguin? Yeah. Have you started The Penguin?
No, just because I've been kind of out and about. I know it has debuted, but I haven't had an opportunity to watch it yet. Have you?
I haven't, and I'm hearing good things.
Yeah,
so
same.
I'm sure I'll get to it. But can I be honest? I'm, and we'll get to this later in this episode too. I'm kind of like I'm desperate for some Batman media that is willing to embrace the zaniness of being Batman related.
Of course, you would say that because I feel very similarly. I didn't know what to expect. The reviews have been, I would say, majority positive, which was like, oh, well, okay. But when I see trailers for it or imagery from it, like you, I think I'm a little darknessed out.
Yeah.
I mean, with Batman, but just stuff. That's just not what I'm gravitating toward these days. And I still do like dark stuff, and then when the right thing comes along, I'll find some show or whatever I like, and it's whatever. But yeah, in this moment, that's just maybe not a place I want to exist in. I don't know.
Yeah, and look, maybe the show itself. Let me. I have no doubt the show itself is well made, and I probably will enjoy it on some level. I have no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was seeing some of the discourse, and I use that term almost reservedly because, like, if this is the state of our discourse, but you have people who are upset because the makers of the show have decided. I'm sure you've seen this. They've changed Penguin's real name from Oswald Cobblepot
Yeah.
to Oz Cobb.
Right.
And so, I see that and I'm just like, why? And by why, I mean, why all of it? Like, the people who are upset at the change, I'm like, all right, well, relax, whatever. But also, why make the change?
Yeah.
Like, that's the line. You know what I mean? Like, it's the Penguin. He's a bit like, we know this. You know what I mean?
Do you think they would say, well, that feels too Fable-esque? Whereas like Batman Returns feels heightened. It's kind of a fairy tale world and a weird dark fairy tale, but Cobblepot, kind of a name, and they just feel like they're trying to keep this grounded reality. It's like that name sounds too fantastical or something.
I mean, I guess, right? And it's funny because big picture, truly, I don't care. I really don't.
Right.
But even still, it's like, what's the line here? What's the line between too unbelievable?
Sure.
Like that Oswald Cobblepot is where you know what I mean?
Yeah. You see, this is where you get into that thing. I mean, sometimes I remember back when Christopher Nolan was doing his movies. Obviously, everybody really loved them, but I remember some people saying, "Well, does everything have to be explained in a realistic way?" Like, you sort of get into that with James Bond and his gadgets these days as well. Where they've grounded it a bit. But I feel like Nolan for me was that perfect balance.
Yeah,
where it is kind of cool having a version where they explain, oh, well, the Batmobile is this, military project that never got off the ground, and he has it in his whatever, like, oh, that's kind of interesting, and that makes sense, because otherwise, where did Michael Keaton get his Batmobile made? Who knows?
Right.
I don't care, but who knows? But then, then you can kind of just get a little too realistic, and I'm with you. I want like an air of fantastical, I think, a little bit to Batman, because that's maybe the magic formula for me. It doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, just a little bit, I think, even in your Nolan versions.
Right. I mean, and look, maybe this upcoming, Brave and the Bold movie that's part of the James Gunn universe will scratch that itch, right?
I'm guessing it will, because I don't see where else you can go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Matt Reeves right now kind of has the corner on like gritty, inverted quotes, realism.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. Look, it's the same beef I had. I said this about Dark Knight Rises, which a movie anybody listening to this knows I've come a long distance on. I'm totally fine with that movie now. I wasn't as much when it came out, but I've said, look, that to me, The Dark Knight Rises is about the limit of quote unquote realism when it comes to Batman. And I think the Reeves, I mean, at this point, it's just one film. It seems at least adjacent to it or running parallel to it, like it's that same vein of quote unquote realism.
Yeah.
Not bad, but I mean, that's what it is. Right. And I'm kind of like, and obviously I'm coming at this as, I grew up reading the comic books, etc. But I look at the animated series. And the 90s animated series, and I'm like, that feels to me like kind of the Gestalt version of this, where it's grounded, but you have room for a Clayface who still feels like he fits within that milieu. Right? Give me a live action Batman that's comparable to the animated series, and I'll be a happy camper.
Totally. Yeah. I don't know that we've quite seen that. That would be really cool if that's where they did go next. Yeah,
and I mean, ironically, that animated series was created in the aftermath of the '89 movie, right? So it was meant to kind of be evocative of those films, but I would argue that it stuck the landing better than that collective of 4 films did.
Sure. Yeah.
Have you seen, by the way, the Cape Crusader animated series on Amazon?
I watched the first episode, and I would say that it's an episode that almost, I feel, begs you to watch the next one as well to really understand what it is. And for whatever reason, I was tired or something, I didn't watch the second one, and I have not gone back.
Okay. Be curious what you think.
Yeah.
Of the season.
Again, not because I didn't like it, but you could argue also it didn't quite grab me either. So
Yeah, it's. I think so. Hamish Linklater, who plays Batman, he's great. God, he sounds like Kevin Conroy. You know, he's fantastic. Most of the voice actors are very good. I think, and I did a review in the paper. I think the issue I had was, and it's because Bruce Timm is involved, and you got J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves, whatever, and it feels like it's forcing a comparison with the animated series. And the problem is it's just not the animated series.
Yeah.
Right. Which is not necessarily the fault of this show, but I would offer it in the need to be different is like, well, they already nailed it the first time. So whatever you change is by definition not going to be as good.
Sometimes then it feels like, well, they're making differences just for the sake of doing something different, for the excuse for this to exist.
Yeah, I think so. You know.
Yeah.
But regardless, thank you, Alex, for your letter. And as it happens, we've got some more bat-related stuff to discuss. So let's take another short break and come back right after this. And we're back. And you know who else is back, Brian?
Who's that, Zachy?
Why, it's Francis Ford Coppola, one of the greatest directors in the history of this medium you and I love so very much. I'm talking about cinema. Oh, beautiful cinema. On a related note, he happened to make one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my goddamn life.
I will not stand for this Rainmaker slander.
I thought you were going to go with Jack. Jack slander.
I thought Jack was too easy.
Rainmaker is good.
Rainmaker is good. Yeah. Well, I was just, I misunderstood. Okay. You're talking about Megalopolis, but is this the same Megalopolis I saw this week?
It might be.
Can I just jump right in? And Federica asked me, I saw Megalopolis, and she goes, "What's it about?" And I was like, this was over text, and this is what I wrote her. Megalopolis is about a city planner who can stop time, who wants to rebuild a city using a metal he's created that's actually alive. But the corrupt mayor, whose daughter is in love with the planner, wants to stop him. They also have chariot races in Madison Square Garden, a lot of hallucinations, and an old guy asks Aubrey Plaza if she wants to see his boner, and he reveals a bow and arrow that looks like a toy he stole from Cupid. This goes on for over 2 hours. Did I sum it up?
Yeah, so you did. So the night that I went to see this, I don't think I told you I was going to see it, but I came home and I texted you, "What the F did I just watch?"
And I had just watched it, and it's almost as if we had just seen it together. I was like, "Oh, okay." I know what he just did.
So Francis Ford Coppola, again, I want to emphasize this, truly a legend, one of the greatest directors of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I am not taking anything away from him. And he spent $130+ million of his own money.
Which,
respect, man.
Nice if you can do that. But at the same time, I respect it.
Right. I mean, that's, hey, he literally put his money where his mouth is. So I got respect for that. Although his contention all along has been, this is the story I've been wanting to tell and nobody will let me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one instance where I'm like, you know what? Maybe the studios were right.
Yeah. And it's interesting that this is the story he's been wanting to tell for 4 decades, because then I'm like, what story did you just tell?
Yeah.
And I
That's
think
the sorry, just to finish that thought. The frustration I had throughout, but especially after, was I couldn't even find my way into the point he was trying to make.
exactly. I mean, this is just a movie stuffed with half-baked ideas that I believe he believes are high-minded ideas,
Right.
but they're just so broad and don't add up to anything. And they almost, there's a scene that I think is being memed already, or I'm seeing it all over, Instagram and whatnot, where Adam Driver is talking to Natalie Emmanuel, and he's just like, she's like, I want to work with you or whatever. He's like, no, I reserve my time for people who can think about science and literature and architecture and art. And then he goes, the famous line now is, you think 1 year of medical school entitles you to plow through the riches of my Emersonian mind? And that's literally what this movie is. Like, this feels like a movie made by a film student who's been in college for a year and thinks he's learned everything, and now he can't keep it to himself. He has to share everything he's learned. And it's like,
right.
What is this? Like, it's like the first chapter of a philosophy book before you understand really what you're even reading about. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? It's these philosophical, quotes or something that but with nothing to dig into those ideas and really and play with those things or explore those things. It's just a million sticky notes that he's had for 40 years that he whittled into 2.5 hours. And that's a bummer.
It is because what's funny is I've seen some online discourse be like, oh, this is Francis Coppola doing Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, I would call it him doing Southland Tales.
Oh, that too, but certainly from a thematic perspective, it's the opposite of Atlas Shrugged, because to give it credit, it's a film advocating for a kind of selflessness.
Sorry, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right, as opposed to Ayn Rand. It's like no, you worry about yourself and everything else takes care of itself. So it's the inverse of that. However, it's no less stilted and yeah, in a Southland Tales kind of way. It's full of these weird digressions that really don't go anywhere. Characters that are I was going to say archetypes, but they're not even that. They're just they're the characters that all exist to comment on the greatness of the main character.
Yes.
Right. And this is, look, I've never seen a bad performance by Adam Driver.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think even this is a bad performance. I think he does what's asked.
Yes.
But it's the character, I found him insufferable.
And also, again, I like Adam, to agree with you, I like Adam Driver also. I do believe he did what was asked of him. I had heard that they were interested in Oscar Isaac.
Yes, I was thinking about that while watching.
I can maybe see that a little more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I don't want to say that Driver didn't bring something, because I think he did exactly how he was directed. But maybe whatever I apply to Oscar Isaac, I could see humanizing this person a little bit more, with them still being as insufferable as they are, but maybe me understanding that person a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. I just agree with everything you just said. I mean, the characters are paper thin. He is so annoying. The character.
Yeah.
And like, what are we doing? Like, it just feels, I saw somewhere else, I wish I could remember who to credit for this, but they said it felt like a script that's been rewritten for 40 years.
You're right.
Doesn't it? Where it's like, I can see you probably had some nuggets you were really passionate about, but you kept polishing and polishing and polishing and polishing. And then a new idea happened. And then, Coppola's spoken about it. 9/11 happened. That changed his idea of what a future New York would look like, blah, 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 blah. And then you end up with something that doesn't resemble anything. It's just, it's been polished to death.
So the idea here is that this isn't New York; it's New Rome.
Right. Well, it was
So it's
once
sort
New
of
York,
like
right?
this. Was it once New York?
I believe it was, because I mean they're in Madison Square Garden, and
But I just thought like this is like some alternate, like because it says New Rome 21st century, so it's supposed to be like right now.
no, you know what? Maybe you're right. I don't know. I know. Well, I'm not trying to correct, because I think you might be right. I know in past versions it was New York.
Okay.
And they even tried to work 9/11 into the plot of the film, and it's again just with all the revise. But anyway, yeah, New Rome.
I mean, it's very confusing in that regard because, well, you know what? I'm gonna see. I'm just gonna Google it. Whether New Rome was in fact once New York.
Well, while you're doing that, I will say I did enjoy the aesthetic of sort of present or maybe day after tomorrow, time mixed with Roman sort of aesthetic, in their clothes. Yeah. There's a Roman chariot race inside of a basketball stadium. I like that. That's really interesting. And it was really, I enjoyed looking at this movie.
Yeah.
And I would say, there's a lot of...
I agree with that. Yeah.
Right. Like the volume is used a lot in this movie, but I would say this is one of my maybe favorite uses of the volume, because the volume has like kind of a weird, uncanny valley sort of presentation of reality, I think. And I think that almost worked for this film.
Yeah. Well, because it's existing in it's not meant to be. It's a fable, right? So it gives it kind of a fairy tale
otherworldly
vibe.
Sort of vibe to it. So all that stuff I actually did kind of enjoy. But again, I mean, if the plot really is about this city planner who's got a vision for the future and wants to move forward, and there's someone who's opposing him, and then there's the Shia LaBeouf character who's just trying to crash it all down. It's like, it's sort of like what's best for the people, I think is what everyone, or at least that's what Adam Driver's character is trying to figure out. What's best for the people. But the people in this movie, we never really understand them beyond just seeing a bunch of extras behind a chain link fence. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so what is best for the people? Like, is his vision madness? Is it good? I don't know that did the movie ever really explain that? I mean, we get to see it, and it's these moving walkways, which is like, okay,
man, there's a lot of time spent on them moving walkways, I'll tell you.
Yeah, like the thing at an airport where you're just walking and then you get to walk just a little bit faster because you're on a moving walkway. I mean, that is probably the greatest glimpse we get of this incredible vision of the future that he thinks is going to change society into a utopia. So is that what the people need? We don't really get to see that. Like I said, anytime we see quote unquote the people, they are just a group of people behind a chain link fence who seem unhappy.
Right.
So, and we are introduced to the Adam Driver character. I believe we're introduced to him blowing up like a building that the quote unquote the people apparently lived in at one point, so he can pave the way for his vision of the future. So is he gentrifying against people's will? Like what? You know what I mean? Like what's happening?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to feel about any of this? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you're having a normal reaction. By the way, I'm on Wikipedia, and this Wikipedia is Wikipedia, so consider the source. But it says in an alternate present day American Republic.
Okay, there you go.
Caesar Catalina, New Rome, da da da. So in other words, something happened at some point, and this is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, my point is there at one time you have the Julia character, Natalie Emanuel, and she's looking at newspaper clippings about Caesar Catalina's wife being killed.
Right.
And it's a thing. It says something like a Hitchcock film.
That's me too. Yeah.
And so that for the rest of the movie, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, does Hitchcock exist in this world? Like, is this a world where Hitchcock movies exist? Like, which movies? And and I was obsessing over that for the remaining hour and a half.
Right. Right.
That's me. But this is the problem because boy, if ever a movie was meant to strain your ability to not just pick up your phone,
yes. I definitely I thought that, and I'm don't do that. When I'm even at home, even if I'm not enjoying something, I have to keep my eyes on the screen. But in the theater, I thought if I was at home, I would definitely be on my phone. I mean, there's a moment where Adam Driver goes into this meeting to pitch the proposed utopia, Megalopolis, and he just goes into reciting Hamlet, to be or not to be.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, he'll do like a couple lines of this, but he does.
Oh no. I think he did the rest of the play.
I know. But it's funny. I've been listening to some podcasts about the film, and apparently that wasn't in the script. That was something Adam Driver was doing to warm himself up. And Coppola was like, boom, it's in the movie. And it takes up a significant amount of time. It's not relevant to the character or any of the themes of the movie. It's just, it's just, I mean, not to be crude, but it's just wanking. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what this movie is. And apparently there was a real improvisational spirit to it all. Coppola, like, what do you think? Try this. Da 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 da. And it's like, if that leads to something that's worth putting in the movie, amazing. But it feels like he just kind of kept it all in, on top of having something that didn't feel like it was really pointed or sharp to begin with. And so then you just end up with, I mean, again, 2.5 hours of wanking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just, frankly, the spoiler for Joker, I thought the same thing, but Joker is at least a little more coherent. You know what I mean? Like, I am tracking with the narrative of that film. This one, I just don't know where we're going or why. Right?
Yeah, it was. Well, first of all, it's very fun. I was planning to watch it anyway, obviously for the show, and I told Dom, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going," and she's like, "Oh, I'll come too." I was like, "Listen, man, I'm not going for fun here. This is work, you know." She's like, "No, I'll go." And then my sister-in-law, she called Dom, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm going to see this movie." And she's like, "Oh, I'll come too." I'm like,
my God.
"Listen, I need you guys to understand. I'm not going. This is not a recommendation from me, so don't blame me." You know?
I am dying to know what your wife thought of this movie.
My sister-in-law right away was like, "That's the worst movie I've ever seen."
Yeah.
And it was amusing to me because I was like one seat down, and I was just hearing them like trying to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So that was our experience. And I should say, in our theater, there were about maybe 10 people when we started, and it was half that by the time the movie ended.
Yeah, I had walkouts too.
Yeah, so it tested people's tolerance, and I'm sincerely, I'm like, listen, Francis Coppola gets a pass from me forever.
Yeah,
because hey, guess what? You know what? When you make The Godfather, you get a pass.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, knowing that this is probably his last movie that he's going to make, I can't help but be baffled by it.
Yeah, it's funny because I just weirdly, I appreciate that it exists. I mean, this is really what he wanted to do, and he's already like proven. I mean, Godfather 2, Conversation, Outsiders, Apocalypse Now. Like, if this is what's from his mind, I am curious. I would have seen this even if I didn't have to talk about it for the show. Like, I'm just curious, and I'm disappointed, but I'm also like, well, I don't know. I did want to see what this thing in his mind was, but our job to sort of say what we feel, and do we recommend it? I don't recommend it.
I can't recommend it. I mean, it's not like I'm seeing some people who are like, I absolutely loved it. I am seeing that, and honestly, there's part of me that's like, no, you didn't. You're just you're being an eccentric, you know?
I wish I did. I really do. Like, because I like weird stuff like this. Even when it's a spectacular failure, I still can kind of like it for certain reasons. But this, I wish there had been more of a, I don't know. I was going to say like a spine to it. But
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is important. We're not even going to bother doing a spoiler wall for this because I don't know how you can spoil it.
No.
Right? because it's this series of disjointed episodes, these vignettes almost that are vaguely connected to each other. There's a thing about, oh, here's a singer.
Yes, yes.
Like, this is like a major set piece, right?
And it adds up to nothing.
Right. Yeah. It's a singer who is a pledged virgin, and she may not be such. And it really, what you're saying, like, it's not the events that this is about, the midway point of the movie. It doesn't end up having any impact on anything afterwards.
You know what I will say? I have to acknowledge. I mean, I know this is sort of loosely based on certain historical events, or at least
Right.
tales. I don't know. But that is from that story. This
Right.
the driver's character and her character, like, this comes from some sort of historical thing. I understand that, but again, this to me feels like that thing where you have a story you've been working on for 40 years, and you're like, well, this has to be a part of it because it's always kind of been there, and so we'll just sort of work around it, but we'll lose this and we'll change this, and then you just get something that's like a Frankenstein's monster. Where it's like, really, if you could just sort of take a step back and be like, no, like, let's not think about 40 years. Let's think about making this movie in 2022 or 2023. What place does this have?
That's right.
And I don't know that it did.
Yeah, it's I think Shia LaBeouf, like, I don't know what movie he's in.
On those lines though, Aubrey Plaza, I thought she was awesome in this. Like, she, to me,
she's just doing her thing.
She was doing her thing, and I feel like she was in the version of this movie that might have worked. You know what I mean? Like, I really liked the way she was going for it. Anytime she was on screen, she added like a real energy to everything that was going on. In my opinion, I don't know if you felt the same way, but
I found her fun to watch, no doubt.
Yeah.
I didn't track with her storyline though, not really.
Dude, her thing was so funny. Where, again, we're about 2/3 through, or maybe a little more, and I'm like, where are we headed? What is going on? And then she immediately just has this scene like, okay, this is what I want. Here's how we're going to do it. Blah, blah, blah. It just,
exactly.
It's so shoehorned in there just to inject some sort of plot,
exactly,
out of nowhere. So we have a third act. It's just,
that's what it felt like.
Yeah. Kind of a bummer. And then Dustin Hoffman's in this thing, and then he has like a kind of unceremonious exit from this film. Like, it's just, again, that again feels like sort of a remnant of like a 40 years of working on this thing, where that probably was a major thing,
right,
in some iteration of this. But with what we got, it's just like, well, we can't not have that in the movie. It's like, yeah, but we have nothing supporting why anyone would care about why we're seeing this right now. And it's like, well, I'm not going to cut it. It's just Dustin Hoffman,
I mean, the cast is impressive, no doubt.
Definitely,
both young and old.
Mm-hmm.
You got. I mean, first of all, DB Sweeney. I was like, is that the Cutting Edge guy?
I'm going to stop you right there. Who the heck did DB Sweeney play in this movie?
He's the commissioner, the police commissioner. Remember when
Wow. Yes.
You didn't recognize him either?
I can see it now. No, I didn't. Good for him though. He's worked with Coppola.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to imagine most of the people who sign up, it's like, hey man, it's a Coppola joint.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Lawrence Fishburne, like, dude, his like first movie was Apocalypse Now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he gets to, circle a square. And I love, like, it's almost like it's such an easy, I was gonna say lazy, but that diminishes it. But it's such an easy choice. Like, of course you have Lawrence Fishburne narrate it.
Oh man, yeah, definitely.
Because he makes everything sound amazing, even if you can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah. This movie's sort of broken up into these title cards that look like they're chiseled into stone, like ancient Rome style, and then Lawrence Fishburne actually narrates those title cards, and you can't help but sit up a little bit when he does it, because that's just what he commands, Even if what they say is absolutely ridiculous.
Of New Rome, there was a man named Caesar,
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was dating Wow Platinum.
Yeah. So Shia LaBeouf, I found him really obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like I didn't. Here's the thing, and I'm sitting here, I'm trying to pick apart motivations and stuff, and I'm like, they needed to build up some kind of a rivalry between those characters more than like something to ramp up to where the movie ends up.
Definitely.
The antagonism between Adam Driver and Giancarlo Esposito, it doesn't really end up going anywhere.
But I agree, and it's like that could have really been the really delicious push and pull of this, like two different ideologies,
exactly,
and what their motivations are for the people in the end, and who we want to succeed. And even again, I mean,
exactly.
We get a result, and I'm like, is this good? I don't know.
Like, that's kind of my point, is because certainly so Giancarlo Esposito plays the mayor, and I'm like, the stuff he's saying, at least initially, is like, well, I don't see anything wrong with that. Because he's like, hey, we have to, provide services for the people or whatever. And Caesar Catalina is like, we need art and whatever. It's like, well, these are not at odds with each other. Yep. These are philosophies that at least can resonate in some way,
Yeah, you would think, and that would be an interesting thing to explore too,
Right, but instead it's this idea of Caesar Catalina is the great man. Boy, is he great. If he was a pilot, he'd be one heck of a pilot. So maybe Oscar Isaac should have played him.
Yeah.
Right. That's what that drove me nuts. And I'm like, man, the great man. Oh, and I love this, by the way. I don't know if you caught this. And if he has a son, we'll name him Francis.
That was hilarious.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think that was the mayor's name.
No, it is, but
yes.
Come on. I mean,
no, it really pricked my ears when when that happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was going to say, this would be a fun one to really like pick apart on subsequent viewings. And I'm like, as God is my witness, I will never watch this movie again.
No. And again, it's funny. I've been feeling an itch to revisit Southland Tales recently, even though I didn't necessarily like it, but there was a lot of interesting set pieces and things I thought were kind of cool. And even with the freedom to turn it off, I was like, I kind of want to watch that again, but I don't know why I would ever go back to this one.
Yeah.
Disappointing.
So there we go.
Disappointing.
2 thumbs way down for Megalopolis.
Yeah. Oh, we should say real quick, just because this is the interesting sort of conversation around this. But there, apparently, when it debuted at whatever film festival it was, there's a moment in the movie where Adam Driver's character is at a press conference.
Yes.
And in the theater, an actor appeared in the theater, standing at a microphone, and asked a question to the screen, and Driver's character on screen responded to that actor in the theater. And so, which is kind of cool, actually. I think I
agree.
Heard of that before, never seen that before. And apparently there are a handful of screenings you can go to where they are doing that. I did not go to that one. I don't know about you.
Nope. I don't think it's available here.
They were showing it at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and I toyed with going, but going back to what we were saying earlier about ticket prices, it was $27 a ticket.
Okay, just for like a minute of a random dude in the audience saying something.
You know what's funny? That sounds so cool to me. I've never seen that, but it would literally be the most underwhelming thing I think possible, because the question is literally 6 seconds long. Driver just goes, to answer your question, no, not really, but, and I'd be like, that I paid $27 for that. So I'm glad I didn't do that. But I admire the forward thinking, the audacity of it all. It's a cool idea. Just no. Anyway, Megalopolis, too bad.
So there we go. Luckily, Brian, our discussion for this week does not end with Francis Coppola's opus.
Oh no, this has been quite a week.
Indeed it has. So let's take another short break, and then we'll come back and talk some more. And you know who else is back, Brian?
Who's that, Zyke?
Why, it's that wacky cut up, Arthur Fleck. Joker Folie à Deux.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how this is pronounced?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Deux.
Adieu.
It's like madness of two or something like that, I think is what it means.
All right. Madness of 200 million. More like it. Am I right? Because that's how much this costs. $200 million. Just insanity.
Not on screen. That'll be a new thing that I add to my reviews. Was it or was it not on screen?
Seriously, the first Joker cost $65 million.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
And by the way, this movie is freaking gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a criticism of the way the movie looks. I'm just saying half this movie's in a courtroom. So like, I don't understand where that 200 million went.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Joker 2, as we're going to call it, is in theaters now, and it is already underwhelming by way of comparisons with the original film, both in terms of critical response, audience response, and most damningly, box office response. It looks on track to earn about half of what the first one made 5 years ago, which certainly speaks to something. I think if anything, what it speaks to is that 5 years was long enough for society to move on.
I'm really curious to talk about this with you. It's been really interesting seeing the discourse because I don't feel like I had been really tracking what people were feeling with the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the movie and I kind of formed my own opinion. And then I was looking at reviews and people online, and man, people really have knives out for this movie.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And so I'm kind of ready to dig into what it is about it specifically that just, I mean, such a turn from the first one. Like what is it about this one that made everybody turn on this one? I'm ready to have that conversation.
Well, I think just contextually, the first one kind of came out of the blue a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like something that had the benefit of being new and different, right?
Yeah, I mean, with Marvel and even DC in that moment, all the movies felt connected.
Yeah.
And this was not only something that was disconnected from those things, it was its own thing, but it was also this hard R-rated movie, a very, very different take on the Joker. Batman isn't in it. Mm-hmm. And this is pretty bold of Warner Brothers, honestly, to throw this out there in the mix.
So it comes out 5 years ago, and it ends up making $1 billion+. Joaquin Phoenix gets an Oscar.
Amazing.
It's a Cinderella story, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, a twisted Cinderella story. And as soon as it made $1 billion, the whispers started about a sequel, and I was absolutely consistent from the jump. I was like, you don't need to. You got your win.
If ever there was a movie, even a superhero movie, that would have been perfectly fine as a standalone, it's Joker. Yeah.
It really it was utterly baffling to me. And so watching this last night, and I should say it was an 8 p.m. show, so it wasn't particularly early or late, and the theater I was in was, if I'm being generous, half full.
Wow.
Right. So and there were several walkouts that I saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah. About halfway through.
Wow. I can't remember if I said this in the episode or off air, but Megalopolis for me had more people in seats, which I was shocked. But yeah.
I think watching the film, it proved my skepticism from the very beginning about doing a sequel, because it does nothing to enrich the earlier film, and if anything, it diminishes it. And I would offer that I think with regards to the original film, it's not one I've felt compelled to revisit in 5 years.
Same.
And right, so that kind of says something to me about it. Like, I saw it once, I was like, it's fine, and then I've never gone back to it.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, actually, the night before it was on TV, and I started watching it, and I was like, I don't feel like watching this.
Yeah, well, and I think I have to imagine a lot of people had that reaction just based on the reaction to this one.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so for me, it's not as much of a catastrophe as Megalopolis
No.
because, but all that means is that Megalopolis has like 5 exclamation points after WTF. This has like 3.
Sure.
But to me, they're kissing cousins, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely both films from directors who feel high on their own supply.
That's my thing. I watched this movie, and this was my thought. I was like, I don't think Todd Phillips wanted to make this movie, but he did want to cash that check.
That's interesting. You know, that would explain then why it's so ambitious, if we want to call it that, but maybe not entirely heartfelt in its ambition.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's utterly unnecessary. It was over long. It was indulgent. I mean, it honestly, I'm probably one of the worst sequels I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for myself, I have like weird feelings about it. I didn't like it. At the end of the day, that's where I come down on it. Maybe after just having watched Megalopolis, I will say it's gorgeous. I mean, I really, really was thinking about how beautiful the movie was. I mean,
But they're both good looking movies, right?
Well, yes. Megalopolis is dazzling, I would use the word, but in this one I just loved just like the lenses. I was thinking about the lenses and the focal choices and all those sorts of things. Like, it just reminded me of how I love movies to look.
Yeah.
Very cinematic, and so it's a very watchable movie, or it was for me. But the plot is just like paper thin.
Yeah.
I don't feel like much, if anything, was accomplished by it. The musical numbers, I thought, didn't add anything. I mean, typically you have a musical number.
You don't want to hear Joaquin Phoenix mumble his way through some Broadway standards?
See, that's the thing. Is that novel? Maybe once, but if that's all that's going to happen. I mean, there was one musical number, which is in the trailer. I won't say what's going on, but basically it's sort of a Sonny and Cher show kind of thing. And that one I really liked because that was an insight into what Joker was feeling, experiencing, and what it felt like to him and what he now believed to be going on in his life. That felt insightful. That's why you had that musical number. But the other ones just felt like, let's stop the movie and have Joaquin Phoenix sing for 3.5 minutes. But it didn't add anything, right? It wasn't insightful or pushing the narrative forward. So then it started to feel like, oh, wow, we really are pausing the movie. Gonna do another musical number, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. The you know what sums it up for, we're talking about Oz Cobb, right? And here it's like she's not Harleen Quinzel, she's Lee Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the time I'm like, why? Just I'm not saying everything needs to strictly adhere to the comic book stuff.
Yeah.
But I am saying it's like, well, that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
Do you think you're fooling somebody?
Well, it's sort of like we've gone full circle in a way, right? I mean, that goes back to when superhero movies were taking off with X-Men, but they were like, well, they can't wear, colorful suits. They have to wear like black leather because that's cool. Yeah. And then you've got the era where comic movies embrace the weird. And then it feels like now you have certain sort of movies that feel like they have to, like, no. We'll lose them if we make it true to the source material.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, well, actually, did they say her full name once? I thought they did. When his lawyer is explaining who she is.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
But it's, you know what I mean? It's this sort of like wishy-washy, like, again, like it's what I find insufferable is this sense of like, we're going to lean into the IP-ness of this because that's what people show up for, but we don't really want to make that. And I'm like, well, just make the thing you want to make. Oh, we can't because people want to show up for the IP thing. So it feels like this kind of screw you to the audience, right?
Well, so okay, so I mean,
you
without
made
getting
this a success, so F you.
really, I am hearing that. I'm hearing people say that this feels like a big fu to fans of the first one.
Right.
I
And
guess
I'm not even, I wouldn't consider myself among them, really. Like, I thought it was fine.
I didn't feel that way. I didn't, or at least I don't feel like that's the filmmaker giving the middle finger to his own fans. I didn't feel that way personally. I'd actually be kind of curious to hear someone explain that to me.
No,
but
I wouldn't say it's specifically about saying F you to the people who made the first one a success. I think it's just a broader F you to, like, this is how the industry is now.
Because I mean, Harvey Dent's in this movie.
Yeah. And
right?
we kind of get a nod to what's going to happen to him, right?
Yeah, exactly. But they don't, that's the beginning and end of it, really. Just that's Harvey Dent.
Well, this is my point, right? Okay, so the first movie ends, and you say, well, what happens next? Well, eventually, what happens next is, Batman and the Joker. So to then say, no, here's what happens next. No Batman, no nothing. Well, then it's like, then it's not the Joker then. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I mean, I do. This is truly the Arthur Fleck saga.
So it's not Joker. That's my point.
Yeah. Well, so you don't think Joker can be Joker without Batman?
Precious about it. Wait, say that again?
Like, you don't think you can make Joker can be an actual Joker movie without him fighting against Batman?
I'm saying you can do the origin, and you did it.
Mm-hmm.
And what other story is there? I mean, look, the Joker is a vile character. And I don't find Arthur Fleck sympathetic.
No, I don't either, and that's what makes it so weird, right?
Right. There is one scene in this movie that I legitimately thought was great.
Well,
and I'd love to hear if you agree. And it's where it's in the courtroom. And it's Arthur Fleck as the Joker is his own lawyer, and he's questioning Gary Puddles, the little man.
Yes.
Best scene in the movie.
Oh, it's great. That actor is fantastic.
Right?
Yep.
And that was the one moment of sort of like empathy where it's sort of like, here was a character I could empathize with,
Yes.
Because everyone in the movie is kind of noxious, everybody.
Yes. And it's funny because I guess this is the lens that everyone will bring to this. So it's sort of like Wolf of Wall Street or movies like that, right? Where it's like, yes, DiCaprio's the main character and you're spending the most amount of time with him and you might laugh at certain hijinks and whatnot, but he sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's still like debates about that movie where it's like, you realize that he's not good. You know what I mean? He is the villain of the piece, even though the movie makes you, the movie's rousing and funny and whatever. And so likewise, I think it's weird. I mean, that was I think the concern of a lot of people with the first movie was, are you trying to make people sympathize with this like murderer?
Right.
And this movie literally puts that character on trial. And I think what I love about that moment is I'm never really on his side, although I will admit certain moments where he was being, someone would slap him or whatever, I felt kind of bad for him. But he's done terrible things. He's not repentant about it. And through this moment, you're able to see the collateral damage he afflicts upon people, which we don't really witness otherwise. Like, he ruined being in proximity to this guy, the Puddles in proximity to Fleck. He ruined his life.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
You know what I mean? He's traumatized.
Yeah.
And it sort of brings this reality into, instead of just being like, yeah, he's crazy, but like, I'm a little mad too, which you can imagine, some people watching this movie might feel with Fleck, but this scene reminds you like, no, F this guy. This guy's terrible and he ruined this guy's life.
Exactly. And he says like, he's like crying. He's like, you were the one person who didn't make fun of me. It's heartbreaking,
Yeah. And he's like, and Fleck, I hope sorry, maybe this is a little spoilery, but like Fleck is just like, no, dude, I like you. Like, what are y'all upset about? And then the guy,
he's just doing a show.
Yeah. And then Puddles is like, dude, I have nightmares.
Yeah.
Because of you. And I don't know. See, that's why at the end of the day, I didn't think this movie was great, but I didn't hate it as much as I disliked Megalopolis. At the end of the day, I feel like it's a failed experiment, but I found it more watchable, I think,
See,
than
I think
Megalopolis.
I'm just I'm the cynicism behind it really is just what has irked me.
Okay, tell me
because
a little bit about that. The cynicism. What's
It's just truly, this is a movie that had no creative reason to exist.
Mm,
There was a profit motive,
right?
and so it's a little, it felt to me a little like, with Matrix Resurrections, right? That was a little bit of Lana Wachowski going F you to Warner Brothers, right? But to me, that movie does not betray the mythology that she created.
Right.
Whereas this, I'm not saying this betrays the mythology either. I just don't care about the mythology that it exists within, because you already told the interesting story, and that's, how does this guy become Joker? Okay, you don't, what's left to tell? If you're not going to have him fight Batman,
right?
And I want to be very clear. I'm not saying I want to see Joaquin Phoenix fighting Batman. I don't want that either. But I'm just like, you've done that story. What else is there left to tell?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just us watching Joaquin Phoenix shuffling from one, prison courtyard to the thing, and smoking, and it's just like, God, this is just miserable,
Yeah, it's
I'm like, I don't want to hang out with
slow-paced
this
movie.
character.
No, that and the Harley stuff feels, I would say, promising. I thought in the first half, and then in the second half, it just completely crumbles.
Yes.
I didn't love that, even though Lady Gaga is awesome. I thought she was great.
Really good in this. She's really good in this. But I think the idea, I think there's something possibly interesting in the idea that normally it's Joker who corrupts Harley. And here it's the reverse.
Right.
It's kind of interesting.
No, I agree. I like I said, I found that promising. And then they don't love where it went.
They don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
The other thing, we should talk. I guess it's spoilers, right?
Yeah, I have like one big thing I want to say, but I'm sort of saving it because I don't want to put it in people's heads till after they see it.
All right, so let's do the spoiler thing.
Spoilers.
So when they're in the court at the end and the explosion happens,
yes,
I was like, this is obviously a dream.
You know what? No,
really?
I didn't.
I was like, this is like Brazil at the end when Jonathan Pryce gets busted out. You know what I'm talking about?
That's so funny. But I understand why. And for me, I kept questioning everything with Harley because of the fantasies he had about Zazie Beetz in the first movie. So I never knew what was real. Like, she seemed too, like, why is this woman going through such efforts? That. Like, she does say that him shooting Robert De Niro made her feel alive for the first time. Like, okay, but it doesn't really get into much more than that. She's just constantly lying about herself. And so I was like, why is this woman going so much the extra mile for this person? It almost felt too good to be true.
Right.
And so I found myself questioning her occasionally, what was real and what wasn't.
See, that scene at the end when he goes up the stairs and he confronts her, and there was just something weirdly dreamlike about their interaction.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
Right. So I was like, this has got to be not real,
Yeah. Which, by the way, see, this is the thing too, where, I mean, I love movies, of course, that have great stories, great characters, but I also really, really love watching a great visual, and that oneer that they did when he's laying on the ground in the rubble and the soot and all that stuff. And then he passes the stenographer who's dead on the stand and then off the rubble and into the street. And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That was one shot. And then those two guys are like, quick, get in the car. And then he gets in the car. The camera follows him all the way to him running out of the car. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that was a really
well
great
executed
sequence. Yeah. But the thing
by the way, that's where we see Harvey with like the screwed up face. I was like, hey,
half
I get
the scalded face. And I appreciated the perfect way that it was captured. Like, not too long, camera's just passing along the courtroom. His origin story is beginning, but the camera keeps moving.
Yeah.
No, but yes, the Harley. I have like two things I want to say. All right, we'll get back to Harley. The one thing I want to say was there was a moment when the Zazie Beetz character was on the stand, and she was talking about the first movie, and I was like, "This reminds me of the Seinfeld finale."
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right?
Because literally, yeah. That's
It's
same thought.
It's like people just talking about the first movie and putting that character on trial. You know?
And honestly, it had been long enough that I was struggling to remember some of them details.
Yeah, I actually went on Wikipedia because I wanted to refresh myself on the story.
Oh, that's smart.
But so while I do think there were some interesting things, I enjoyed almost every moment he had with Harley. I said I thought it was a beautiful film to look at. Some of the musical numbers felt inspired and interesting. Majority, I would say no.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what is this movie really about? I think going back to what you said, I kind of agree, even though I don't feel as cynically about it. But like, it's like maybe you mistook this character in the first movie and you could look at him as this sort of anti-hero that like you could put the poster on the wall. It's like, well, no, he's not a good guy, but like he's got some interesting ideas, or something about society. Right. But this movie is putting that on trial and going like, reminding you like, no, he traumatized this guy. Like, no, he killed these people in cold blood. Like it's reminding you this person is no hero.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's not much of a plot.
But and just to respond to that, I like genuinely, was there a critical mass of people who came away from that first film thinking he is the hero? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? I think the fears that people had about like, oh, this is just going to inspire a whole bunch of, incel whack jobs, it didn't really pan out to the best of my knowledge.
I agree.
Right?
I mean, I remember that was a big thing in the air when we were seeing it the first time, but I mean, you don't see people dressing up like him, Yeah, not much.
Okay. So let's talk about the ending.
Okay.
Well, how did you feel about that ending?
10 out of 10, no notes. How about you? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't normally do this, but I saw someone post the ending early.
Oh, so you already knew going in?
Yeah, and I was like, screw it. So I read it. Okay. And I was like, oh, interesting. I mean, we're past the spoiler wall, but of course the ending is that an inmate at Arkham stabs Arthur Fleck, killing him. So the movie ends with Arthur Fleck dying on the floor, and out of focus in the background, we see this person using the shiv that they used to kill Arthur to slice the corners of their mouth.
Yeah.
Make sort of like the Heath Ledger style Joker scars.
So the origin of the rictus grin.
Yes. And yeah. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like I was like, oh, interesting. And then when I watched it, I actually thought it was well shot. I liked that we didn't the guy, carving his own face was totally out of focus in the background. I was like, I don't know. I like, do I have strong feelings about it? That's what it really is. No, I don't actually. Like, interesting.
I'm with you there.
Interesting. Like, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm like, oh, interesting for this version. And in a way, I sort of took it as, I guess that sort of ties with the opening cartoon, where it's like you see Arthur Fleck and he has it's a shadow or it's a dark spirit or something, but that's the Joker that keeps attaching itself to him, right? The shadow is the one that puts the Joker makeup on and then sort of possesses him and whatever. And so in a way, I almost took it as, I don't think the movie's actually saying this, but just for myself, I was like, oh, the Joker is almost like this weird dark spirit.
It's like Venom.
Yes, and it inspires people and it possessed someone, and now it is left. That person chose to not claim that darkness, and so the darkness has now been inherited by someone else. The Joker lives on now. That dark spirit of the Joker lives on in someone else, and I was like, oh, okay, like interesting, I guess. I mean, for this version, is that the version I want of a Joker? Not necessarily, but in this weird little side story offshoot imagination thing of Todd Phillips, I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. I don't know, you?
Whatever, man. Okay, so a couple points. Number one, what's very clear, and this is not a new observation, but like Todd Phillips just wanted to do his Scorsese pastiche.
Yes.
And that's clear as day, and this gave him a way to do that, right?
Yes.
And so this ending, he's like, yeah, see, the movie's called Joker, not The Joker.
Right.
So
Right.
You all thought that this was this, but actually, and I'm like, bro, sure, I guess I can't get worked up about this because I don't have that much emotional capital invested in this being the Joker. I don't really care about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it when you look at in toto the portrait it paints of this character by the Arthur Fleck character, I'm like, that the death of Arthur Fleck, the problem to me is he's neither noble enough for it to be tragic nor evil enough for it to be ironic.
And I think that's why this movie fails,
Right.
ultimately, because in reading this interview, I kind of want to comment on what you just said too, because I think that's really important. Is this being some sort of Scorsese pastiche thing, using, the imagery of Batman stuff, the Joker, Gotham, Bruce Wayne is present in the first movie. I never, in my mind, this was never on the shelf with the other Batman films.
Sure, yeah, same.
So I think that's why I'm not getting as angry over this stuff. I'm like, that was a choice. Okay. Kind of thing. So maybe I think you saying that, I agree with that. And that's why I'm not getting so angry about it. But going back to the whole Arthur Fleck, and does this movie even have a point? And him being neither good nor bad nor learning anything, I don't think. It's interesting reading this interview with Todd Phillips. I'm seeing it on IGN, where he is talking about the ending he talks about Arthur with a lot of warmth.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I caught that. Yeah.
Right. And when he, the ending, when Arthur has been summoned to go meet someone who's there to see him, and he's walking down the hallway, and then this inmate approaches him, Todd Phillips is like, yeah. And then Arthur, when the inmate says, do you want to hear a joke? And Arthur's like, sure. And it's like, he smiles because he understands what it's like, to want to try to make someone laugh. And it sounds like he has a lot of sympathy for him when he's
and can I just interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
Like reading Phillips is saying that, I got more out of him saying that than watching it in the movie.
I agree with that. But it also just makes me feel like I don't know that the movie accomplished saying
That's
anything.
The point.
Yeah,
exactly.
like what are we supposed to feel about him? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's left to each person. I
think Phillips is trying to, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know that he has really thought this through, because I just being frank, I don't know that he has that level of engagement with the story. Like, I think he's got a visual sensibility that's very impressive. I think we both agree it's well shot. It's not a bad looking movie.
Yeah.
It's not a bad performed movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, like you're saying, I don't know what it has to say, right? Because the inherent, the message there of a guy, kind of this nebbish with mental health problems, who ends up becoming the face of this movement that even he can't control. Well, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That, right? I mean, just as a concept, there's something there. But you put both of these two movies together, and you got to stretch to really pull that out of it, in my opinion.
No, I don't disagree. And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier about the musical numbers. Mm-hmm. But to your point about Phillips just having a bunch of ideas and executing them in a beautiful fashion, I mean, that really is what I think this winds up being, especially with the songs, because I was thinking about it even more. Like I said, the one song I really like is that Sonny and Cher one, because it felt like insight.
Right. It's commenting on the movie.
It's commenting, yeah, and what Arthur is feeling, and like what he's projecting from what he understands now about Harley and like, oh, she really could care less if I died or what, that kind of thing. But the one where he's in the asylum and he's watching TV and he starts singing, and then he basically just sings for 3.5 minutes and it goes right back to the TV. I was like, well, what was that? Like, it was just like a idea that Phillips had that didn't. The movie literally is paused.
Yeah.
And then that happens. And so, it really almost kind of reveals itself, this movie, if you really pick it apart. It's just a bunch of ideas executed beautifully, but with very little to say, I think.
That's and so, as we are recording this, I mean, we're at the tail end of the opening weekend, which is, I mean, it is disastrous.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's no other way to look at this, because it's against a $200 million budget almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking at domestically, they're saying $39 million. So,
wow.
So less than half of what the first one opened to 5 years ago.
And I mean, yeah, obviously there's been bad word of mouth for a while, and the musical thing was, off-putting to some people and whatever. But I mean, for a movie, the one before this made $1 billion,
right?
And to go to this, I mean, this should be studied.
It really, there's a couple points here. Number one, we talked about it on the show several months ago when it came out, how big the budget was.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both sort of gobsmacked because, and I don't remember exactly what we said. We can go check the tape, but I think we were both like, why on earth would you be spending that much on this?
And this doesn't feel, especially after watching the first one, it feels right-sized. Right? So, like, why... I don't know. I mean, unless it's like getting all those 1970s cars on the street. Like, I don't know where that money's going.
Well, it went to the talent, presumably, right?
Yeah,
everyone got a big markup. And this is the thing, right? Because, like, let's say this one cost something in the neighborhood of the first one, that was 65 million. Let's say this was 85 million, right? Mm-hmm. Would this still be a bad opening? Yes, it would, but it wouldn't be a catastrophic opening.
Yeah, right.
And so that's one of those things where, because I saw somebody on social media who's like, Todd Phillips took Warner Brothers for $200 million and he made the movie he wanted to make. We should be applauding him. And I'm kind of like, for $200 million, he could have made 5 movies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see this as like a blow for the little guy. I'm kind of like, I'm not defending Warner Brothers. They were stupid to go for this, but I just, it goes to what I was saying earlier. I don't see any driving artistic intent behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, just based on the audience reactions, which the cinema score is lower than that of Madam Web, which I think you should get a plaque just for that.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. It's this was one of those sequels that managed to be aimed at nobody. Like,
yeah, and it's funny, speaking of the Madam Web comparison, I mean, Madam Web, I think the low scores came from disbelief. And this one seems from just anger.
Yeah.
Disappointment.
Well, and, I mean, when you look at the box office coupled with the cinema score, people did not show up, and those who did show up hated it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the... So in other words, like you're saying, like, this is going to be studied. Like, what are the pieces that went wrong here? People are like, oh, nobody wanted to watch a musical. I actually disagree with that.
I think it could have worked.
Yeah. I don't think that was an immediate turnoff. My contention, honestly, is what I've been saying all along. I think people showed up, they watched the first movie, and they were like, okay, well, that's the movie. And even those who liked it were like, I don't need more of this. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. A lot more is accomplished in the first one, whether or not you are happy with what's accomplished or enjoyed it.
Yeah,
a lot more is accomplished. Very little is accomplished in this one.
Yeah, so I found it interesting that usually the week before a new release, you have, all this, in addition to late night talk appearances, you have like all the stuff that shows up on YouTube, like, Joaquin Phoenix answers Google surveys, or, you know what I'm talking about? Like those things.
Yep.
I didn't see any of that.
No. I mean, I know Phoenix recently, he dropped out of a movie, and that was a pretty controversial thing. And I wonder if there's a little bit of trying to avoid that conversation. And then, with Lady Gaga, it's a big deal. I mean, she's a big actress. She's been Oscar nominated. She's put out an entire album, I think, that's like themed Harley kind of a thing. But also at the same time, you're hearing very little from her.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just wonder if they sort of caught wind and we're just sort of like, let's try to not get this stink on us. I don't know.
This is like William Atherton is about to flip the switch, and everybody starts backing out of the firehouse.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I will say, Lady Gaga, I think we both agree she's pretty great in this. I don't really have any complaints about her performance.
Oh, disappointing! She's so good in this. Like, it's like you wish she had been given more to do, more to accomplish.
Yeah, so she's certainly not to blame, and I think Joaquin Phoenix totally fine. But I think sometimes you say this all the time, right? Like it's the too much can spoil the stew,
Right.
And to me, it's like, Johnny Depp got an Oscar nomination for playing Jack Sparrow the first time.
Mm-hmm,
and by the fifth time, at least me, I was like, okay, please God, stop.
Yeah. Wait, so okay, you were saying also you were telling me about an alternate ending. What was this a shot, or was this the original intention, or what was the
So this is I'm reading this off of Dark Horizons, and they are citing I want to make sure so according to My Time to Shine, Hello, and other sources via comic book movies. So take with a grain, but it seems to be verified by people who saw it. The original ending of the film has Arthur catching up with Lady Gaga, on the iconic steps from the first film. In this version, she's fully embraced her new Harley Quinn persona and then kills Fleck herself before dancing and singing "That's Entertainment" on the steps as the cops close in around her. Video of on-set filming of that ending has resurfaced online today in the wake of all the discussions about the film. Why the studio decided to change it is not clear. However, this is interesting. Reports the past few days have indicated the studio decided not to test screen the Joker sequel at all, even as reports about a test screening were published across film and geek sites in mid-May. So this was whatever rationale, one presumes it was a Todd Phillips decision. I guess he had final cut.
What are your feelings on that?
I will say, I mean, not having seen this ending, the one that I just read to you, I think the ending of the movie is fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that per se. Having Harley kill him, it's like a lateral move. I don't think it would fundamentally change my thoughts about the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I don't think it would like salvage everything.
Right.
I do like it though, kind of. It might feel a little more full circle-ish. Like, but I also kind of appreciate
maybe it's too much, Brian. Maybe it's just too much. Maybe like it would just be too much for audiences to see that.
I can understand that.
He's so pathetic. Right?
That's very true. I guess maybe. Okay, at the end of the day, I think I do appreciate if the Joker darkness is being passed along. I almost appreciate it more if it's being passed along to a stranger. And it's like this weird and almost like It Follows infectious, or like Smile or infection kind of thing. Something like that feels more nihilistic and weird, and I like it better. But it would add a little bit more of an arc or something to Harley. It's interesting. I think it's interesting, but I guess like you said, I guess it's kind of lateral.
Yeah. The one thing that I'm thinking about with this whole conversation, and we were talking about like the Penguin earlier, and it's great. Batman has this great rogues gallery where you can do this. You can just be like, hey, let's just follow this villain, right? But I think fundamentally, as opposed to almost any of the other villains, the Joker is a villain we should not sympathize with.
Yeah.
Right. And his essential appeal is in his moral opposition to Batman. So he functions as a vehicle for us to appreciate our hero more.
Yeah.
You know? And so this story as sort of an adjunct to the Batman myth, and especially considering now, like Todd Phillips, haha, I Shyamalan'd you, wasn't even the Joker.
Yeah.
Fine, that's fine. You know, okay. but to me, it really underscores like how important Batman is in all this, because he should be the lens we view all this stuff through.
Right. I sort of see what you're saying. Yeah.
And whether we're talking about the 89 movie, and I would say even more successfully The Dark Knight, like they really get that, like the idea that, the Joker is a great villain. He's fun to watch, but he's a villain. And he shouldn't be our focus. But maybe that's the point Phillips is trying to make all along. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's too generous personally. I think Phillips had no interest in doing a comic book movie. He just wanted to do this thing, and he found a way to basically, to sort of take advantage of IP craziness at the studios.
Yeah.
And do and hey, you know what? Respect for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not a company man, especially a company I have no financial investment
in. Right.
But the decision making that led to the Joker sequel, yeah, I mean that's, it's Cats level craziness,
Yeah. But I'm seeing a lot of memes and people posting. I mean, they're like, maybe we're gonna make it after all. Where it's like you have the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score and the audience score finally, in some sort of like drastic. They're both drastic, but they're in alignment.
Well, both this and Megalopolis, right?
Oh yeah, well yeah, that
it's this weird symmetry with both of them 2 weeks in a row. So
yeah.
and you know what? Both to acknowledge the other side of it. Both represent the vision of their respective filmmakers with no interference, I would presume, with regards to Joker.
That's very true. Yeah.
That's something,
That's something. Yeah.
But I've said before, I mean, I think Todd Phillips, he ruined Hangover, in my opinion, with those 2 sequels. And on the other hand, as far as DC movies, this is now, what is it, like 3 times in a row where you have like, or maybe 4 times, where you have like a sequel, like the first movie is successful, and then the sequel is such a disaster, it almost like retrospectively ruins the first one.
Man, that is just wild.
Right? Because we got Joker, we got Aquaman just a few months ago, which again, nobody remembers the sequel, and they like forced themselves to forget the first one.
Yeah.
Right. And then Shazam.
Yep.
And then kind of Wonder Woman, I might say. Although I think that first one holds up better. But boy, I'll tell you, that sequel just nuked the joint, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How does that keep happening?
And it's the same people coming back. That's what's nuts. You know what I mean? They were all directed by the same person.
That is so crazy. That's like really crazy.
Right? Patty Jenkins.
Yeah.
David Sandberg.
Yeah.
James Wan.
Yeah.
It's not like, this person left, and now somebody came in and they upset the apple cart. No. You got all the ingredients again, and the first time people showed up, second time people just made a choice not to. Yeah, and we can put an asterisk on Wonder Woman 1984 because of COVID and stuff, but the other ones.
But I think the response was people didn't really like it.
People, those who saw it didn't seem to dig it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's weird because I know Wonder Woman 2 got a little goofier in tone and made some weird choices. But like Aquaman 2 is really similar to Aquaman 1. So it's like, what changed? I don't know. Did everybody said, yeah, we got it.
Honestly, I think it's the same thing. I think it's like you already did it the first time. That's so interesting when it comes to, I think superhero sequels in general are very challenging.
Yeah.
And there has to be something value added in there. And that could be a broader discussion, right? But it feels like DC in particular had some real challenges with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I said this before, like, you know, it irked me that we never got like a solo sequel to Man of Steel.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And yet you have to think that the reason that they turned Man of Steel 2 into Batman versus Superman was some acknowledgement that more of the same by the same people may not have worked might not have pulled in audiences again.
Yeah.
So they had to make it value added. And that seems to be borne out by the fact that all of these sequels, I mean, they collapsed.
Yeah.
You know, from movie 1 to movie 2. I mean, I don't know where Joker 2 is going to end up, but we're looking at a billion plus earner for movie 1 and a second one which may not even crack 100 domestically.
That is so wild,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's I'm kind of just fascinated by that. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anywho. Hey, well, I think that's a good place to leave it. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good.
But hey, give us your thoughts. Maybe we're wrong.
I really am looking for. I probably will look up more conversations about this. I want to hear conversation about this. I'm kind of curious.
Well, you know where to reach us. It's at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. As always, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps. You can also hit like on our Facebook page. Did I already say that? I can't remember. Nothing makes sense anymore. Life is a dream, Brian.
That's right.
If you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner, ZAKIS Corner. I'm also at the San Francisco Chronicle and IGN and The Wrap. I have a piece up at The Wrap with my review of Daryl Dixon, the Walking Dead spinoff, season 2, which has been quite good. I also have a piece at The Chronicle featuring my interview with the filmmakers of The Wild Robot. Got some other stuff in the hopper too, but look for that soon. What about you, Brian?
As always, episodes of Young Jedi Adventures are available on Disney Plus, Disney Junior.
And of course, your back catalog of Puppy Dog Pals.
Oh yeah, Puppy Dog Pals, Disney Plus. You can find them all there. Well, anywhere actually. I mean, Amazon, any streamer really.
Everywhere.
Yep.
With that, on behalf of Brian Hall, my name is Zachy Hassan. This has been Movie Film 301. We'll catch you next time. Thank you, folks.
Welcome, friends. It's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast. Enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian.